Hey teacher friends, welcome to Sutton Teaches Secondary. I am Miss Sutton, but you can call me MarQuitta. So, it's a new year. Can you believe it? It is 2023. I can't even believe we've been in the 2000s for 23 years. If you are like me, then when you tell your students about something that happened in the 1900s, they go, the 1900s? And every year we get further into 2020 something, it just reminds me how far we have come in the 20s and past Y2K and all the things. Anyway, look, being in the new year means that we have an opportunity as teachers to do like a reset. And one of the things that I love is being able to come to my classroom in the new year and just do like a hard reset. And sometimes that reset is for behaviors. Sometimes that reset is for mindsets for students because maybe they're not producing work the way that I would have hoped in the year prior. Maybe it's just a chance to kind of refresh and get students kind of thinking about what they did last year so they can continue to build. Either way, I want to share with you some tried and true things that I have done and continue to do every time I come back from a winter break, because I know we're coming back from winter break. Who's ready? To kind of reset. And if you're someone who's looking for some ideas on how to reset classroom behaviors, like maybe behaviors were not where you were hoping they would be, then I definitely have something for you. So make sure you're staying tuned. And I mean, if I do say so myself, I think it is quite restorative. So that's like exciting stuff. Make sure, teacher friend, that you hit the like button if this helps you at all. Or, if you just want to support, it also helps to make sure that you see things like this in your feed on a regular. So, it's free, it's supporting, it's okay. Okay, so let's get started. Number one, I like to do a start stop. Start stop can look a lot of ways. One of the things that I love, a teacher shared with me a long time ago, I'm not going to take credit, this video it's on YouTube, and I'll try to find it and link it, of people who get stuck on an escalator. And it's the funniest thing, right? They go up the escalator, they get stuck, this escalator stops. And instead of just walking up the steps, they're like, hello, we need help. Oh my gosh, what do we do, right? And the kids are like, oh, this is so stupid. Why don't they just walk up the steps? Hello, message, right? So they watch the video a couple times. We discuss, right? We talk about it. How is it a metaphor for life? All of the things that we like to talk about. And then we start bringing it home. So what are some ways that we have been stuck on an escalator? And I might have them write them down. What are some ways that last year you were stuck on an escalator as it relates to school, right? Maybe it was you were having a hard time getting up on time, or maybe you knew that you needed to go to bed at 11, but instead you stayed up till 2 because you just didn't want to get off of TikTok, or, whatever the case. And then once we start brainstorming and I have students think on their own and do a little bit of reflection about what are some of those things, we do a start stop. And so then I give out sticky notes, because I love me some sticky notes, 1 or 2, just depending on the class. And I say, hey, not 1 or 2, 2 or 4, right? Because you need a start and a stop. And I tell them, hey, what are some things you want to stop? What are some things you want to start? And I model. And I think it's important to recognize that these are moments where students are being very vulnerable. And so in order for students to be vulnerable, I've got to model being vulnerable. So I might say I have not been doing a very good job of whatever. And so I want to stop that this year. And then I'll put the opposite, right? And so instead, this is what I'm planning to do this year in order to do better. So give students time to do that. And here's the thing, maybe depending on your class and the dynamics, they write them down and they put them in their notebook, or they put them somewhere that they'll be a reminder, and it's just for them. Maybe for some classes, they don't put their names on the sticky notes, and then they come put those up on the walls, up on the board. I've definitely done before where I've written stop, start on the board like a T-chart, and then I have students just put them up, and I put them up randomly. And this is usually helpful for a class where there's been some very common issues or common behaviors that we all know we need to stop. The class where students just are not very focused, or students are having a harder time focusing. Let me reword that. Or classes where I haven't been getting as much work turned in, and it's been pretty consistent among not just a few students, but a lot of students, then I might have them put them on the board. And then instead of having students share their personal stop starts, I read them to the class. I've also done where students can share just individually with their neighbor, right? You can have, or someone that they feel comfortable with sharing in the class. There's a lot of ways you can do it. You can even make this a bulletin board. So it could be a bulletin board that you create, like in 2023, I will stop and start. And so students put them up on the bulletin board and they stay for the whole month of January or however long, just as a visual reminder. Either way, there's lots of ways you can make it happen, as long as students are getting this idea of like something I'm specifically stopping and something in turn that I will start. I love it. That's one of my favorites, I will say. Now, my second always gets a good response from students as well, and that is a pep talk. And I don't give the pep talk. I let Kid President do the pep talk. I don't know if you've ever seen his video of the pep talk. And it is older, and maybe students have seen it before, but guess what? We can watch something again. It still has merit and value. And so I show it, and he's like, I think we all need a pep talk. And so I let the video play. Sometimes I play it twice, depending. We talk about just like the nuggets, right? What are the things that we get out of it? Big picture ideas. And then I have students write themselves a pep talk. Because how often do we write to ourselves and tell ourselves something positive? And depending on where your students are and kind of the needs and emotional and kind of whatever reset needs to happen, that might be what it is. Like, students just maybe need to fix their mindset of like, instead of doubting so much, deciding that they want to believe in themselves. And that's fine too. So you decide. I think it's great. And then, you know, students can keep those pep talks, usually something like that. Like what'll happen is I will model actually writing. Like there are times like this would be a time where if students are writing, I would sit down and write too, just because I think it's important to say like, we are a community. We are all deciding that we are giving ourselves a pep talk. And they may not necessarily see what I wrote, but see that I am writing. And then same thing for them. If something like this, if I'm having them write themselves a pep talk, I'm not going to have them share. But I am going to have them keep it somewhere where they can hold on to it. There's lots of ways to make that happen, but great idea of just when students just need some encouragement. I think we all need a pep talk. Even if you are choosing to not do this as a reset, I think the Kid President video deserves being watched every year, because every year we all need a pep talk. There's a point in the year, especially if you teach high stakes classes like AP classes. You know, there comes a time in the year where students are just so overwhelmed and they just need a moment to be like, you are great, you will do great things. And you know, like, it's okay. Times get hard, but you're tough, you know? You might even need to watch it, and that's fine too. Sometimes we need a pep talk. We're on 3. Yes, we're on 3. Okay, so teacher friends, if you are having behavior issues, I highly recommend this one. So if there's been some behaviors, some egregious behaviors or things happening in your class that just, and not necessarily academic, but just like, you know, students are not following directions or whatever the case, right? We know what that looks like. We know what that feels like. This one is for you. So I like to do a letter to my class when I am not seeing the expectations being fulfilled of what I thought I've communicated and what I thought I've tried to build, and it's still not happening. Then I write a letter to the class. It's important for students to see the letter projected to the board and maybe projected on the board. You might also have a paper copy. And then I give students a moment to privately read it. And then depending on the class, I might also read it too. I don't do anything else before this, right? Like, this needs to be a very serious, come in, boom, this is happening. So my letter usually details what I've tried to provide for students. Like, this is me. I've come in with these expectations and with like this love and wanting to do great things in our classroom. Unfortunately, this hasn't happened. However, this is what I'm hoping can happen in the future. And I also make sure to infuse in there some things that really humanize me, because I think sometimes students forget that we are human, and they forget that their other classmates are human. And sometimes they're just so caught up in being people and doing the things that make them happy or whatever they felt in the moment, whatever the case, that they forget that their actions actually affect other human beings, which is normal, right? We live in the world, we see Twitter and all the things. People act and don't quite think how, like, the ripple effect of that. And so I try to make sure to humanize that, like, other students in your class have been feeling this way, or I have been feeling this way. I also make sure to include in there how it's made me feel, or how I've then internalized that, or whatever the case, right? Something that very much humanizes me and how being in this environment has then in turn hurt our classroom and all of the things, like our community, all of those. And I'm very specific about what the expectations were and what things were not being followed. And this is not a moment to put people down. I don't say specific names. I don't belabor the point, but I am clear, right? And you do want to make it like a sandwich, like, great things, this is what I was hoping, great things, love, community, this is what we're hoping, this has been the breach, this is how I'm hoping we can move forward, right? After students have read the letter, I ask them for their response. Like, what do you feel about this? Do you think this is true? Do you feel like this has been legit? How has this affected our classroom environment? How do you think this has affected our learning? How do you, like, we ask and answer those kind of questions. What do you think we could do moving forward? How do you think we could fix it? Because, it'll be really rough, or like, it would suck to go through the rest of the year and have these same problems. And make sure to very specifically say, this is not a moment to throw anyone under the bus. We're all a community. Let's work together, X, Y, and Z. After we've done that, students then have a chance to write a letter to me specifically. And then, once again, I remind them, I'm not asking you to write about anybody else but yourself. What have you done? What can you do better? What do you think about our classroom community? How can our community be better? What can you do to do that? Right? And the letters you get, they'll run the gamut. I make sure to collect these letters. They don't share them with each other. I collect them, and I actually do read them. And it's amazing what students will tell you. And it's amazing how students will own them to their own. And even if a student has not been the student who's been like having some of the egregious behaviors, students will say, like, I see that my friend does X, Y, and Z, and I can talk to them and tell them to stop. I just don't, because I think it's funny, or, whatever, right? Students are pretty honest. And like I said, it's nice to do it when you've come back from a break, because it's not in the thick of it. It's kind of like we're starting fresh, and it's not like anything has happened recently where someone can say, well, they did this and they did that, right? It's like, look, we all did something. And students have written the letters to me. That's when I roll out or reestablish the expectations. And I say, moving forward, reminder, these are our classroom expectations. This is what we're all expected to do in order to gain or create community in our classroom. This is what I'm going to be holding you accountable for. This is also what you're holding each other accountable for, and yourself, however you word that, community, style, all that good stuff. And then you make sure to follow through. And then if any of the letters need some kind of follow-up, then you can also do the follow-up, because sometimes students will tell you things like, I don't do well sitting next to this person. Can you please move me? And then you all those things, all that stuff will come out when they write you letters. You'll be surprised. And I think it's also a good reminder, like when things start kind of almost going wayward again, you can bring it back to, remember, y'all, we decided before We decided this year that in 2023, this is not going to be a thing. We decided that X, Y, and Z is not going to happen. And I know I read your letters and you told me that you're going to blah, 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 blah. And even if it means, and you can also keep those letters for when you need to have personal meetings with someone. Pull out the letter and say, yo, this is what you told me. Remember, I agreed that I was going to do this. And then in your letter, you said you're going to do this. And it doesn't seem like you're doing this. And that way we're having a conversation versus like a you did X, Y. And it's not so much of I told you to, it's you said that you could do this. So I know that you're capable. Like, I know that you can do these things and that you believe these things are good and right because that's what you put in your letter to me. Like I said, it needs to be first thing when you walk back into the classroom. And even if it's not the first day back, it just needs to be like, you can't do a warm up and then do this. This needs to be like special alert. Dun, 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 dun. This is a thing. We need to have a moment. I need to talk to you all and tell you because it's that urgent. And this needs to turn around immediately. Okay, so let me know if number 3 works. Actually, let me know if any of these work, if you decide to do them, if you put your own little spin on them, whatever you decide, let me know. Number 4 is writing a reflection. So if you're not one that wants to do a video or a stop start or any of those kind of things, you can literally just give questions and have students answer those questions in a letter format to themselves or to you, however you choose. I think this is great if you have already given out grades for the semester or trimester or quarter or whatever, especially if grades and work being turned in was not quite where you wanted it to be, or you think that students can up the ante and you want to push them to do a little bit more. So like this year in my AP classes, we are writing reflections. When we come back, I'm excited to have them do this because I have some students that have really been on it and can push themselves a little bit further because we're getting closer to AP test time. And then I have some that like, I need you to come on. I need you to come with us. I need you to like get it together and bring it. And so I think this will be a great way for them to do that and quite appropriate for just our environment and the things that are happening in there. And the last one, number 5, because we have to have 5. You can't just have 4. You have to have 5. So the last one, instead of having students make a resolution, have them make a SMART goal. If you have never heard of SMART goals, I would be very surprised if you never heard of SMART goals. But if you haven't, they are specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and timely. Meaning your student's not going to say, I want to do better this year, or I want to get a better grade. Instead, it's I want to earn a 75 to 80% in this class by this date, doing X, Y, and Z, right? That's what you want students to get together. Whatever is good for your class, but making sure that it's a SMART goal, not just like, I feel like that's always the issue with resolutions, right? Is that they're just like, I'm gonna lose weight, or like, I'm going to get a better grade when we think about classroom. And it's like, okay, and kids come back in the beginning of the year and they're like, yes, all A's. And if you had grades that were not as great last semester and not even close to A's, depending on the student, they might gas out in February. But if it's a goal that's a little more attainable, if it's a goal that's specific, and maybe the A is attainable, they just hadn't been pushing themselves, and so then they're writing out the steps to attain that A, whatever the case, right? When it's something that's specific and measurable and all of the things that make it a SMART goal, it's easy. It is harder for students to give up and gas out. and it's something that if it's written down, it can be pushed. Make sure you hit that like button and that subscribe button so that you do not miss out on any of the cool and fun and exciting things I have coming up this year and want to share, teacher friend, because that's what we do around here. Drop me a line in the comments. Tell me if you use any of these ideas or if you have something that you'd like to suggest, right? Because we're learning from each other. I want to know. Let's share, let's learn, let's grow. And as always, you are amazing. Bye.